September 3rd, 1955. Roberts Temple Church, Chicago. One funeral, hundreds of men, no chaos, no violence, just silence. Yet everyone knew what that silence meant. When Bumpy Johnson walked into that church, he was entering a place ruled by fear. This was not an act of rebellion or public mourning. It was careful planning. One man stood firm against a hostile world and walked out alive. The question is why? To understand that moment, we have to go back a few weeks earlier. August 1955. Chicago was gripped by heavy summer heat, the kind that presses down on your body and makes every breath feel heavier. In a small apartment on the south side, a mother stood alone in her kitchen, staring at a black rotary phone. It felt far heavier than it should. Her son was gone. Emmett Till was just 14 years old. He had traveled south for the summer to visit family, to experience freedom before school started again. What happened next depended on who was telling the story. Some claimed he broke a rule. Others twisted the facts, but one thing never changed. 3 days later, he was taken from his uncle's home in the middle of the night. Days later, his body was found in a river. Authorities wanted a quick burial, a sealed coffin, no questions, no attention. That was how things were done in 1955. Silence was expected, justice was avoided. But Emmett's mother refused to accept that. Standing in her kitchen, phone in hand, she made a call few people would dare to make. She did not call a lawyer or a public leader. She called someone the system could not control. Bumpy Johnson, Harlem, age 50. He was known for power, discipline, and influence. He had seen the worst parts of society and survived them. But there were lines he would not cross. One of them involved children. He had met Emmett years earlier through friends in Chicago. He remembered the boy as bright and curious. Hearing what happened changed something in him. When the phone rang in Harlem, Bumpy listened without interrupting. When the mother finally spoke, her voice steady but heavy, she told him the truth. "They took my son." There was a long pause. Then Bumpy spoke quietly. "I will make sure he comes home, and I will be there." She explained her plan. She wanted an open coffin. She wanted the world to see what had been done. She knew what that meant. Threats, danger, fear. She was not asking for retaliation. She was asking for protection while she spoke the truth. In 1955 America, that was dangerous. Bumpy understood immediately. He asked only one question. "When is the funeral?" "September 3rd, Roberts Temple Church." "I'll be there," he said. The threats began soon after. Late-night phone calls, warnings meant to scare her into silence. She reported them. Nothing happened. She understood then that help would not come from official channels. She also knew opening the coffin would change everything. Meanwhile, far away, those responsible faced no consequences. Life continued for them as if nothing had happened. That reality made one thing clear. If she was going to speak, she needed protection from people who did not rely on promises. Back in Harlem, Bumpy prepared carefully. This was not emotion. Emotion caused mistakes. This was planning. He identified potential risks. He arranged trusted men to stay close at all times, not to provoke trouble, but to prevent it. The goal was simple. Make sure no one tried anything. No displays, no noise, just presence. On the day of the funeral, Bumpy arrived quietly. So did others, men with reputations strong enough that no one wanted to test them. Inside the church, the coffin was opened. The world saw the truth. There were no disruptions, no confrontations, just a powerful stillness that spoke louder than words. When a mother chooses truth over silence, the world is forced to respond. That day in Chicago, everyone understood exactly whose side they were on.
Unless someone acts first, you hold the line and do what's necessary. Understood. The line goes quiet. Philadelphia, Bronzeville, Cleveland. 17 calls in total, each one short, each one clear. By 2 in the morning, everything is in motion. Word moves fast through certain circles, not through newspapers or radios, but through whispers and phone calls. One message spreads everywhere. Bumpy Johnson is involved, and Bumpy Johnson is standing with Emmett Till. Anyone thinking about causing trouble on September 3rd is advised to rethink their plans. The final call goes to a man in Chicago who runs a private car service. No introductions are needed. 3 vehicles, clean records, no connections. September 3rd, 8 in the morning, parked outside Emmett Till's building. Drivers stay close, engines ready. The man hesitates. You expecting problems? Bumpy answers calmly. I expect someone to consider it and then decide they prefer things the way they are. The line clicks dead. Bumpy pours himself a drink but doesn't touch it right away. He watches the glass catch the light. His thoughts drift, not toward anger, but toward restraint. There are easier paths he could take, faster ones, but that is not what was asked of him. Mamie didn't ask for retaliation. She asked for safety. She asked for the chance to speak without being silenced. 5 days remain. 5 days to make sure the truth is seen. 5 days to stand between a mother and those who want her quiet. If someone chooses to test that boundary, they will regret the decision, not because of emotion, but because of consequences. The phone rings again. A voice he doesn't recognize, heavy accent, full of confidence. You don't belong in Chicago. Stay out of this. Bumpy smiles, not warmly, not kindly. I'll see you at the church. The call ends. He doesn't reach for weapons. He has those. What he prepares instead is clarity, a message so unmistakable that no one misunderstands it. 72 hours before the funeral, Emmett Till notices a car across the street from her apartment. 2 men inside. They don't move. They don't speak. She calls the police. The response is indifferent. No laws broken. No action taken. By midday, the car is replaced by another. Same routine. Same silence. The message is obvious without a single word spoken. That night, she doesn't sleep. She sits in the dark, holding on to whatever small sense of control she can find. Fear isn't what drives her now. Determination is. At Robert's Temple Church, the pastor walks through the sanctuary. Everything is prepared, yet the air feels heavy. He prays not for attention, but for peace. He knows prayers alone won't stop hatred, but he hopes they help. August 31st, 1955. Penn Station, New York. Bumpy boards the overnight train to Chicago with 20 men. They blend in, quiet, patient, focused. They look like professionals because that's what they are. The train moves west. The sound of steel on rails feels like a countdown. A man beside Bumpy asks quietly, "You think anyone will try something?" Bumpy stares out the window. I know they will think about it. And if they don't back off, Bumpy doesn't answer immediately. Then they'll remember why they should have. September 1st, 2 days to go. The story spreads everywhere that matters. Back rooms, closed doors, low voices. Bumpy's in Chicago. For the Till funeral? Yes, and he's not alone. Men who usually chase profit instead choose distance. Whatever this is, they want no part of it. Because this isn't about territory or money. It's about a child, and a mother who refused to stay silent. And when someone like Bumpy Johnson decides to stand between silence and truth, the rest of the world learns to step aside.
Vernon sat at a kitchen table with 3 other men. Empty bottles littered the surface, along with ideas that should never have been spoken out loud. Vernon wasn't officially part of anything, but he shared the beliefs, the anger, and the willingness to act on it. "We'd take care of it the night before," he said. "No building, no service. Problem solved." One man immediately shook his head. "You've lost your mind. Do you know who's backing her?" "So what?" Vernon snapped. "So Bumpy Johnson isn't just anyone," the man replied. "That's the kind of name that makes people disappear. You go anywhere near that church and you won't get a second chance." Vernon slammed his fist on the table. "We can't let her turn that boy into a symbol." "Symbol of what?" another man shot back. "You're talking about destroying a church. I'm not ruining my life for that." The argument went nowhere. The meeting ended with no plan, but no peace either. Vernon left furious. The others left relieved. But men like Vernon don't forget ideas. They wait. September 2nd, 1955, 24 hours before the funeral. At 6 in the morning, a train rolled into Chicago's Union Station. The platform was quiet. A few travelers moved through without noticing the group of men in dark suits who stepped off together, calm and deliberate. They disappeared into waiting cars. Bumpy Johnson didn't go straight to Emmett Till's apartment. Instead, he met trusted people in Bronzeville. Maps were laid out, routes marked, schedules reviewed. Every possible angle was considered. 3 entrances, one man explained. Front, side, and basement exit. Bumpy studied the layout. And above, covered. And fire risks? We're watching the perimeter all night. Bumpy nodded. We're here to prevent trouble, but if someone insists on creating it, make sure it ends quickly. By midday, the message had spread everywhere that mattered. Bumpy Johnson was in Chicago, and he wasn't alone. Most people chose distance. A few considered testing that boundary. None understood how much preparation stood in their way. September 3rd, 1955, morning. Before sunrise, a line formed outside Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ. It stretched for blocks. People came quietly, no shouting, no chaos, just waiting. Inside, the service was prepared exactly as Emmett Till requested. The casket was open. She wanted the truth seen. People moved past slowly. Some cried openly. Others couldn't bring themselves to look for long. Parents held children close. No one spoke loudly. The silence said enough. Outside, Bumpy arrived without ceremony. 2 cars followed. Men took positions at each entrance. Nothing dramatic, nothing aggressive, just presence. A pickup truck passed by, then again. The 3rd time it slowed. The driver looked at the church, the men standing calmly at every door, the certainty in their posture. The truck moved on and did not return. Inside, Mamie stepped forward. She stood at the microphone, steadying herself. The room fell completely quiet. "They told me not to show this," she said softly. "They said it was too much." She paused, took a breath. "But I wanted the world to see what happened to my son." No one interrupted. No one looked away. She spoke of who her child was before that summer, his laughter, his hopes, his kindness, a future that was taken from him. People listened. Some clenched their hands. Others wiped tears from their faces. Near the end of the service, a man stood and moved quickly. One of Bumpy's men stepped into his path. No grabbing, no shouting, just a firm block and a quiet warning. The man stopped, thought better of it, turned back. Mamie never noticed. She was at the casket, resting her hand on the glass, whispering her goodbye. At noon, the service ended. The casket was closed. Pallbearers stepped forward. Mamie followed, walking with strength that surprised everyone who saw her. The crowd exited slowly, changed by what they had witnessed. Outside, reporters waited, and by the next morning, the images would reach homes across America, forcing people to confront a truth they could no longer ignore.
A nervous reporter steps forward, holding a notepad tightly in his hands. He clears his throat. "Excuse me, sir? I'm with the Tribune. May I ask why you're here?" Bumpy Johnson looks at him long enough that the reporter's hand begins to tremble. Then Bumpy nods toward a woman getting into a car nearby. "You see her?" he says calmly. "She lost her son. She wanted to bury him and tell the truth. Some people didn't want that to happen. I'm here to make sure it does." "Are you expecting problems?" the reporter asks. "I was," Bumpy replies, "but whatever was thinking about causing trouble decided it was better off somewhere else." "And who were you?" the reporter asks. Bumpy steps closer, his voice quiet and steady. "My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm standing between a grieving mother and the people who want to hurt her for speaking the truth. If you write about this, write about her. If you make it about me, we'll have a conversation you won't enjoy. Are we clear?" The reporter nods and backs away without writing a word. Bumpy watches as the cars pull off, Mamie Till inside, surrounded, protected, alive. The service is over, the coffin is closed, the photographs are taken. Justice may fail in a courtroom far away, but truth has already won inside that church. Truth now lives in those images. Truth lives in the faces of the people who saw them and understood that this wasn't just one place or one case, it was a national reckoning. Bumpy lights a cigarette and watches the crowd slowly disperse. Marcus approaches him. "Are we done?" "Not yet," Bumpy answers. "She still has to get home, and then there's a trial coming." "You going to that too?" Bumpy looks out toward the horizon, where the city almost looks peaceful. "Yes," he says, "because when those men walk free, she'll still need protection." September 19th, 1955, Sumner, Mississippi. The courthouse is quiet but tense. Inside, a jury sits, already decided. Outside, Bumpy stands with Marcus and others, not to provoke, not to interfere, only to make sure Mamie walks in safely and leaves the same way. People watch from a distance, some stare, some whisper. Inside, the trial unfolds like a performance. Witnesses speak, lawyers argue, the jury listens without listening. 4 days later, the verdict is read. Not guilty. Cheers erupt from one side of the room, handshakes, smiles. Mamie remains seated, silent, absorbing the weight of a system that has failed her completely. Bumpy grips the bench in front of him, jaw tight, eyes steady. Marcus leans close. "Say the word?" "No," Bumpy replies. "She asked me to keep her safe. That's what we do." Outside, the crowd has grown. Some celebrate, others rage. Bumpy's men form a clear path from the courthouse to the waiting cars. Mamie walks through it with her head held high. Someone shouts an insult. She doesn't react. Marcus starts forward. Bumpy stops him with a hand on his arm. Not now. Mamie gets into the car. The door closes. The convoy moves off. Bumpy looks back once at the crowd still cheering. They think they won. They didn't. Justice may have failed that day, but truth left the courthouse alive. The verdict does not end the story. The photographs travel. They appear in magazines, in newspapers, in homes across America. People see them during breakfast, in barbershops, in churches. They cannot look away. Mamie Till does not stop. She speaks, she travels, she shows the world what happened to her son. Her grief becomes a voice that cannot be silenced. Within a year, that voice becomes a spark. Rosa Parks later says she thought of Emmett Till when she refused to give up her seat. Martin Luther King references him in speeches. A boy becomes a symbol. A nation begins to change. Bumpy Johnson does none of this publicly. He gives no interviews, takes no credit. He returns to Harlem, back to his quiet office, his records, his business. One night, Marcus asks him why. "Why did you do it?" he asks. "You barely knew her. There was nothing in it for you." Bumpy swirls the drink in his glass. "Do you ever have trouble sleeping?" he asks. "Sometimes." "I don't," Bumpy says, "because when I close my eyes, I don't see people I failed. I see the ones I protected, the ones still alive because I showed up when nobody else would." Marcus nods. History books may never mention Bumpy Johnson in this story. They will not write about the men who stood guard in silence, but they will remember the truth, and sometimes that is the only victory that matters.
History rarely remembers the men who work in silence. It doesn't record the people who stood outside that church in Chicago, or the quiet protection formed in Mississippi, or the unseen barrier that stopped a tragedy before it could happen. History records the names of the people who were protected, and that is enough. Bumpy Johnson never needed his name in a history book. He needed to sleep at night, and he did. Because when Emmett Till needed someone to stand between her and the people who wanted to silence her for telling the truth, he was there. Not for attention, not for praise, not for recognition. He was there because it was the right thing to do. In a world where doing the wrong thing often carries no consequences, choosing to do the right thing becomes a form of power all its own. Years later, the men responsible for Emmett Till's death would give a paid interview. They would speak openly. They would face no legal consequences. The system allowed it. When Bumpy learned about it, he didn't explode with anger. He didn't make threats. He sat quietly, lit a cigarette, and reflected on a hard truth of the world. Some men face judgment in courtrooms, and some face it elsewhere, in moments that never make the news. But that was never his story to tell. His story ended the day Emmett Till walked out of that Mississippi courthouse alive, head high, unbroken, protected by people the system would never credit, but history desperately needed. Real power isn't about domination. It isn't about fear. It isn't about control. Real power is about who you protect when no one else is willing to stand up. And on September 3, 1955, inside a church on the south side of Chicago, Bumpy Johnson proved that some things matter more than territory, more than money, more than fear. He proved that truth, when guarded by people willing to stand for it, can survive anything, even hatred, even injustice, even America in 1955. This story is shared for historical understanding and reflection. It is not meant to promote harm or illegal behavior, but to highlight the impact of courage, responsibility, and moral choice. Thank you for watching until the end. These stories take extensive research and time to bring to life. If this story meant something to you, if you believe in accountability, awareness, and using power responsibly, consider subscribing. Help us continue telling stories that matter. Stories about truth, stories about consequence, stories about choosing protection over destruction. The next story is coming soon. Until then, remember, real power is not what you can destroy. It is what you choose to protect.